So Caitlin Clark revealed her squad goals, sort of. This is a play on words, a pun, if you will, just having a little fun with Caitlin Clark's latest interview. She did an appearance with, I believe his name pronunciation is David Eichel of Swarmcast 24/7 Sports. I will link the full piece in the description.
Every time Iowa needed a stop, a spark, or a sarcastic remark to break the tension, Kate Martin delivered.
Every sports dynasty has that one player who rewires the atmosphere the instant they enter the room. Someone whose presence you feel before their name ever appears in a headline. At Iowa, that somebody was Kate Martin. She didn't splash 30-footers or flex for TV cameras. She calibrated the temperature of every practice, every huddle, every timeout. Coaches swear she could sense tension in the air the way weather satellites feel humidity. When nerves spiked, she'd step in front of Caitlin Clark, lock eyes, and slow the storm with whispered words. Breathe. We've got this. On the stat sheet that shows up as nothing, a phantom line of empty space.
Real quick, what did you notice about Caitlin's work ethic?
Yeah.
Was there anything that stood out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she was in the gym constantly.
Yeah.
And it was the way she approached everything too was it was with a sort of excellence. It wasn't oh, I'm just gonna go through the motions and whatever. It was no, I'm here to kick your butt in every single drill, every single practice, and especially whenever our gray squad guys were playing against us, it was if you're across from me, you're my enemy, you know? And I think that's just kind of how you have to approach things to get better. And she had that, next level mindset, and it really just raised us all up with her.
Yeah.
On the court, it showed up as poise, an unshakable calm flowing through an entire roster that refused to blink, even when a sellout arena was one possession from implosion. It wasn't always glamorous. Martin's fingerprints hid in the mundane, arriving 45 minutes early to rebound for walk-ons, sneaking protein bars into teammates' lockers, memorizing the pregame playlist so she could skip tracks if the team vibe dipped too low. Stories leak out from managers. She once spent an entire bus ride rewriting scouting card fonts so dyslexic teammates could read the notes faster. Invisible work, tangible results. And that invisible infrastructure would become the scaffolding on which one of college basketball's brightest stars climbed toward record books. If you could bottle the energy of Iowa's practices in 2023, you'd get two very different flavors in the same glass. At one end, Caitlin Clark, a Category 5 scoring hurricane, treating each free throw drill like a pay-per-view showdown. At the other, Kate Martin, equal parts firefighter and metronome, keeping the gym's pulse from bursting its arteries.
The workout or training video, I've discussed how Caitlin Clark is going to have time to work on her game that she otherwise hasn't had before. She went straight from college to the pros, grueling schedule to start the WNBA season. It's a scary thought for the rest of the league. I've articulated that on many occasions, but she said it herself too, which of course adds fuel to that. And then the other was Unrivaled, and Kate Martin's performance at Unrivaled. Kate Martin has looked great thus far at Unrivaled. Obviously, Kate and Caitlin have a bit of a relationship.
Their relationship formed its own ecosystem. Clark's competitiveness demanded relentless pace. Martin's composure refined that pace into rhythm instead of frenzy. Teammates talk about the eye test drill, a 10-minute scrimmage where Clark would light up from 27 feet, only for Martin to close the possession by tracking down the long rebound, pointing out a missed box out, then tossing a perfect outlet for a layup on the other end. Over time, the synergy grew into shorthand. A single nod from Martin meant switch to zone. A finger tap on her wrist told Clark to slow transition, just enough to drag a trailing post defender.
Looking back on it, and then even just talking to you now, it's yes, Caitlin is a big focal point of the team.
Yeah.
She's gonna have to do a lot of the scoring, all the things. And it's almost like good cop, bad cop or something.
Yeah.
I don't mean it in
No,
literal terms, but she just had to be herself, and that was gonna win you games. But then you had to come in and kind of be a calming effect. And so I'm actually...
Long before sports science tracking confirmed it, players felt the momentum graph of each practice flatten under Martin's steady hand. She wasn't muting Clark's explosion. She was framing it, the way a museum curator angles a spotlight, so a masterpiece blinds you in the best possible way. In private, Coaches nicknamed them Calm and Chaos. The secret was that Chaos felt safe because Calm held the detonator. All that calibration exploded onto the national stage when Iowa tore through March.
Y'all, I think teammate relationships are like some of the most special and unique relationships you can have. This is Caitlin Clark, this is Kate Martin. They both played at Iowa, and tonight they'll play for the first time in the WNBA. And this is the moment that they see each other for the first time on the court. Like I said, the teammate relationship is already so special, but you can just imagine in Caitlin Clark's position, where she's already admitted it's quite isolating being this popular at this point, so much so that she doesn't really go out very much. Not to mention there's been so much criticism online, not by the players, but simply the territory that comes with being a popular woman in the women's.
First came LSU. Clark's 41 felt like a controlled demolition, each bucket a new fault line cracking open the bracket. 2 nights later, undefeated South Carolina arrived with the weight of an empire, and Clark dropped 41 again, as if destiny had scheduled an encore. Social feeds melted, ESPN recut openers at midnight, and pundits debated whether Clark had just authored the greatest 2-game stretch in tournament history. Freeze frame those broadcasts, though, and you'll catch Martin owning the spaces between the fireworks. There she is at 4:19 on the game clock, steering a freshman into the correct weak side stunt while Clark waves for an isolation. 90 seconds later, Martin boxes out a forward 5 inches taller, tips the rebound to a guard, and races the lane to be the invisible decoy that frees Clark's pull-up triple. Moments later, she whispers something to Clark. No one heard the words, but the next possession Clark smiled and buried another logo bomb. That's the alchemy. Martin shaded emotions just enough to keep the flamethrower from overheating. Iowa advanced, broadcasters gushed about gravity-defying arcs, and inside the locker room, Clark pointed at Martin during the post-game speech and said, "She's how we breathe."
For this, because you were the first person who I felt like said, yeah, Kate Martin's a pro. Like, draft Kate Martin, she's gonna be able to do different things. I think you started saying that you're either a sophomore or junior year. And, you know, media members aside, I'm not, you know, maybe it's me, maybe it's not me, not gonna throw myself under the bus here. We were like, you know what? I think she could be a fringe WNBA player. She has potential, but, you know, Caitlin's giving her endorsement. If there's one thing I've learned about you in covering you for 4 or 5 years or whatever, how long it's been, when you talk ball, you genuinely talk basketball. Like, there's no personal relationship attached. So I guess, how do you feel about Kate doing really well and Unrivaled so far? And now she's getting a chance at the Valkyrie to really make a statement next year too.
You can't track that on Synergy, but you can feel it when a 60-0 run of pressure never reaches 0. Fast forward to April in Brooklyn. Kate Martin isn't on mock draft boards. Her plan is simple: show up, clap for Caitlin, maybe post a behind-the-scenes vlog later. But expansion franchise Golden State Valkyries have been mining second-round gold for months. Their data room lights up on players who sprint the lane at 90% effort in the final minute of scrimmage. Martin's name ranks top 3 in the entire class. When pick 32 arrives, the commissioner reads Kate Martin, and a jolt of delighted confusion ripples through the theater. Martin's face flashes every emoji at once: shock, joy, mild panic about walking in heels. Cameras catch Clark jumping to her feet, screaming louder than for her own selection. Behind that viral moment sits a stack of Valkyrie's scouting reports: her backdoor cut efficiency, her catch-shoot time to release, her communication decibel average.
Look great at Unrivaled thus far. There's no question about that. And it's funny that Caitlin emphasized exactly what Kate had said about playing free. Those were the words Kate Martin used when she talked about her unrivaled excellence. So it's fascinating to see it echoed. I don't know if that's because they talked or just they think alike. Obviously, they play alike in the way that they understand where to be on the floor together. They had so much success together. And I think a lot of people are excited about the possibility of what Kate Martin can do with the Valkyries, Caitlin Clark included, despite her saying she wants to recruit her and team up again.
Golden State's coaching staff basically sees her as a human API for movement offense. She lands in a system that worships read and react timing, an environment where her intangible superpowers become visible. Day 1 of training camp, a vet complains about a miscommunication in a 5-on-0 drill. Martin rewinds the play on a tablet, rewrites the cue, and solves it before the next rep. Coaches grin. Yep, that's exactly why they called her name. Early minutes are scarce. Expansion rosters juggle veterans, first-round scorers, and marketing expectations. Martin bides her time gathering intel, who loves bounce passes on curls, which teammate hates left-hand feeds, which set the coaching staff trusts on broken possessions.
I would say so. Like, I just remember you have that summer before, and she was doing things that I had never seen anybody do before. And as a freshman, to come in and have that kind of confidence, like, not everybody has that. Like, I was like, oh, I haven't really seen anything like this. And so we knew she was going to be outstanding. And then, at the beginning of the year, we had some big wins, and there was highs and lows that year for sure. But, it took us a little bit to figure it out. But it obviously turned out better than I could have ever expected or thought.
By mid-June, she's essentially a walking analytics report dressed as a rookie guard. When injuries force rotation tweaks, she steps in against the reigning champs. Strong side corner 3, splash. Next trip, she sees the big hedge too high, spins baseline for a left-handed scoop that ends up on the nightly highlight reel. Later, she digs down, strips a former MVP, and keys a fast break that flips the lead. 14 points in 11 minutes. The post-game scrum flocks to All-Stars, but Twitter rewinds Martin sequences frame by frame. How she pointed at a cutting lane before it opened. How she shouted, "I see," half a beat early, freezing a pin down. Iowa fans spam heart emojis. Bay Area writers tweet about Bay K. Martin. Coaches tell media she's an instant connective tissue. Vets appreciate the hustle. Rookies copy the habits. And Martin's plus-minus hovers in solar orbit.
And she works so hard. Like, Kate's still somebody I talk to every single day. And I think just watching her believe in herself from probably my junior year when she was a senior and trying to decide if she was going to even come back and take her 6th year to where she's at now, and seeing her belief and her confidence in herself grow as much as it has, it just makes me really happy, because I've always seen that in her. It was just getting her to believe, like, I am this really good player. I can grow into becoming this really good player. And she's always had the leadership skills. She's always been the type of person that, whether she's going to get in the game, whether she's going to play 10 minutes, whether she's going to play 30 minutes, she's going to give you every ounce of herself. She's going to cheer as hard on the bench. She's going to play as hard in the...
Meanwhile, Clark texts a screenshot of Martin's stat line with a row of flame emojis, reminding her friend that the grind translates. The narrative shifts. Maybe that draft surprise wasn't sentimental. Maybe it was the first move in an analytics master plan. The WNBA rumor mill never sleeps, and by midseason it's buzzing louder than an arena scoreboard. Could Clark and Martin one day reunite? Their games fit like dovetail joints. Defenses forced to triple shade Clark past the volleyball line would leave 35 feet of hardwood for Martin to carve like a surgeon. Baseline sneaks, one more passes, corner daggers. Off the court, Martin's emotional shielding would dilute the glare of Clark's celebrity, giving the superstar space to breathe between interviews. In transition, they're nightmare fuel. Clark's full-court vision turns a single defensive rebound into a 3-second runway. Martin sprints the opposite wing like she's auditioning for a track relay, ready to finish or sling the extra pass before help even finds the paint.
You obviously have a player like Caitlin who's on the team. I have to ask, when did you first hear about her, and then what were your first impressions of her when she got to campus?
Yeah, she had come on a couple visits, and she was like a big name in Iowa. So I had heard about her. I wasn't from Iowa, so I didn't know as much. And that like all Iowa attack, like AAU program is like so big, and I had I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it.
And so I was like, oh, whatever. But it's like a big thing in Iowa. And so I had heard about this Caitlin Clark, and I was like watching videos of her just like having like 40 points, like averaging a million in high school.
Coaches imagine advanced lineups where Clark's gravity stretches the floor and Martin slices through seams, all while chirping defensive coverages loud enough to make courtside mics blush. General managers stare at cap sheets, crunch scenarios. The word synergy gets tossed around so much it loses meaning, until you remember that in Greek it literally means working together. These two make that phrase look like Destiny's spreadsheet. Every championship core has an unsung element. Pippen's point-forward genius, Draymond's defensive switchboard, Rodman's 91 offensive rebounds in 6 games madness. The stats rarely capture it in real time. History only notices when the glue separates and the masterpiece cracks.
In her last game, Kate Martin had one of the best games in her WNBA career. She went off for 14 points in limited minutes, but let's watch some of these highlights because I feel like she finally found her groove. She was playing in the flow of the offense. As you can see here, she goes for a fast break. She beats her player off the dribble, goes left. And a lot of fans were saying like, this looks like the OG Kate Martin, the Iowa Kate Martin. She is finally, finding her rhythm and getting involved, and she has a much bigger role.
If Clark is a flamethrower, Martin is the oxygen keeping the flame high, hot, and controlled. Iowa's run was proof of concept. Golden State's early tape is the lab replication. Insiders already debate win share shadows, a term for the wins that follow certain players even when box scores say otherwise. Martin's shadow glows bright. Scrimmage teams she leads tend to win by small yet stubborn margins. Advanced models trace the swing to improved communication and decreased turnover chains. Coaches trust those shadows more than highlight reels because they signify repeatability. Martin's sneaky superpower is making repeatability feel like momentum. Put her next to Clark again, and those shadows could merge into something most defenses simply can't afford to guard. So where do we go from here? Maybe the league's next great backcourt reunion is a year away. Maybe rivalry is the fuel that pushes both players to new peaks. Either way, every time their names cross in the same sentence, algorithms hum, ticket sales blip, and fans lean that tiny bit closer to their screens. The hidden code behind Clark's brilliance turns out to be a second line of code named Martin. Concise, efficient, invisible until you debug the game film and see it humming underneath. Now it's your turn to call the shot. Do you believe Kate Martin is the league's hidden MVP, the intangible that will tip playoff series when the margin is a single heartbeat? Or is she the next breakout star, ready to stack box scores until the glue player label feels hilariously outdated? Drop your verdict in the comments. Smash that like button so the algorithm keeps feeding you hoop stories that dig under the surface. Hit subscribe and ring the bell. We've got more hidden codes to decode, more behind-the-scenes truths to unearth, and the next video might just change how you watch the game forever. Because in basketball, the loudest highlights often start with the quietest cue. And Kate Martin has been cueing greatness for years. One calming breath, one whisper, one perfectly timed cut at a time.